You know, okay. Just trying to adjust that there. But um, I don't think it's a secret that as a fan of MLPFIM, I've pretty much made it clear that I'm a supporter of Sparity, basically Spike and Rarity being together. It's kind of like, I'm a fan. It's kind of like, it reminds me of being a fan of and supporter of Son Sal, which is Sonic and Sally in Sonic the Hedgehog. Um, but what really gets me a little bit is I check something here for a second. Just making sure something. There we go. But what really gets me a little bit is, how a lot of people question, why fans like me would support Spike and Rarity. I'm not saying that other people out there have not made valid points as to why this doesn't make sense. They've made a lot of valid points. Heck, I did a video recently, audio video, where I basically talked about how other shows and movies have proven that it can work. But I think the other reason why a lot of fans support Spike and Rarity is because Spike and Rarity represent something. And that is, expect the unexpected, but mostly that dreams do come true and that anything is possible. I think that is one of the biggest things I've noticed about it, is that dreams do come true and anything is possible. And that on top of that, I think the biggest message out of that is the old saying of love conquers all. And there's always sayings of love knows no defining age. No, love knows no defining stature. No, love nowadays in today's society, love knows no defining gender, if you go on to look at it that way. And I think when you look at Spike and Rarity, it kind of exemplifies that. Because whether you support it or you don't, the interactions that you get between the characters, as subtle and as strong or as subtle, like I said, or minimized or small or whatever you want to call it, the moments you get between them kind of echo all those things that I said, all those sentiments. Because when you look at a character like Spike, you would think, in reality, someone like him would never stand a chance with someone like a Rarity. And a lot of shows today in today's society has pretty much proven that. Movies as well. But yet, when Lauren Faust came up with the idea to give Spike this crush, this infatuation with Rarity, it was basically from a point of view to see. It basically was done to kind of use him as an example or as our eyes. He was used as our eyes to see the beauty that Rarity was, and or the femme fatale that she was, from his perspective, which served as our perspective. And I don't know if Lauren Faust intended for Spike's crush with Rarity to go as far as it has, as far as the show goes, the comics go, or even the fandom goes. But yet here we are. And again, when I think about Spike and Rarity's relationship, like I said, it's almost like it's a message of saying, never give up. You know, it's a message of, like I said earlier, love conquers all. Love conquers all. And, you know, if you put your heart and mind to it, you can achieve your goals. You can achieve your dreams. And I think when they wrote the episode Secret of My Excess, and they decided there it would be that moment at the end, at the beginning and at the end, when they decided that those would be the moments that would define this relationship and make it stronger than what it was before. I think Lauren Faust, who was still working on the series at the time, I think she heard about the support, and I think she kind of wanted to implement that idea of that if you're true to yourself and you tell somebody how you really feel about them, if you admit your feelings, that you can achieve anything. I know that doesn't make sense, but the point I'm getting at is I think what Rarity and Spike's relationship exemplifies is the fact that just because you might be different in many ways, there might be a difference between both of you in many ways, that love knows no defining boundaries. You know, for Spike and Rarity, it knows no defining stature, it knows no defining race or speciesism. It knows none of that. And I think that's why a lot of fans in the Brony Pegasister Friendship is Magic fan-base community, as well as contributors, reviewers, collabers, like I Love KP a lot, and Voice of Reason, and Silverquill, amongst many, why in their own way they support this pairing, because they see that the overall message that you get with it is, it doesn't matter who you are, how big or small you are. You know, it doesn't matter what species you are, or in our case, what race you are. That if you truly care about each other, anything is possible. Love can conquer all. And I think that's the message that sometimes gets thrown across with Rarity and Spike, is the fact that love conquers all. That it doesn't matter, that for a character like Rarity, it doesn't matter, you know, who Spike is. You know, it doesn't matter how small he is. It doesn't matter what species he is. To her, it's like she loves him for who he is. And even though the writing staff has never really capitalized on saying, hey, we're going to come out and officially make these two a couple, that doesn't stop them from at least hinting and indicating that there is something between the two that can be built upon if necessary. I mean, I'm sure they know that the fans out there would love to have an answer. But for right now, it's up to the fans' own interpretation. And I think the interpretation that we get is, yes, there is something there, but the overall message that we get beyond that is love conquers all. And that love knows no boundaries. Love knows no boundaries. And to me, that has been exemplified in some of the shows that I mentioned before. I mentioned gargoyles in that audio video, and Elisa's in the relationship that was built between Goliath, who was a gargoyle, and Elisa Maza, who was a human. So when I used that as an example, that too exemplified that love knows no boundaries. It knew no species. It knew no difference at all. When I used Shrek as an example, and the relationship that came from donkey and dragon, it was the same thing. It may have taken to the end of towards the climax. It may have took before the climax of the first movie to define this or make this possible, but it pretty much proved that love knew no boundaries there. It didn't know any difference in species. It didn't know anything about any difference in size. So so when I look at something like Shrek throughout its film series run, still keeping those two together, it shows that love knows no boundaries. Love knows no difference of species or what have you. I even talked about Rescue Rangers. One of the things about Rescue Rangers that got me a fan was Chip and Dale would always fight over affections with Gadget Hackwrench. And yet, throughout the series, in fact in the early portions of the series, they teased at the fact that Chip and Dale could have love interest outside of the group. Chip ended having a potential love interest in Adventures in Squirrel City, which is at the very beginning which was one of the very first episodes of the series. And then, ironically, one of the very last episodes of the series, Dale ended up getting as the comic book writer Ian Brill said when he brought the Rescue Rangers back in Boom Studios, he said he called Foxglove, who's a bat, Dale's on and off girlfriend. And like I said, Adventures in Squirrel City, which was one of the very first episodes, Tammy was a squirrel. So love basically knew no boundaries there, knew no difference of species there. And again, going back to Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic SatAM, who you had the main hero character in Sonic, a hedgehog, having a girlfriend, a love interest in the Princess Sally Acorn, who was a ground squirrel. Love knew no boundaries there. Didn't know no difference of species there. And when I look at at all these examples. Heck, even Bonkers. Bonkers came out in 1993. A lot of people have the differences of opinions on that show, but Bonkers had a relationship between Bonkers himself, who was a bobcat, or at least a cartoon bobcat, and Fawn Deer, who was a deer. And even Tailspin, which came out in 1990, kind of did this as well. Anytime Baloo got infatuated with a female besides Rebecca, it was always a female of a different species. And most of the time they were either foxes or coyotes, whatever, what have you. He always ended up with somebody. Heck, there was one episode at the end where he started to kind of show some interest in a former friendly rival called Plain Jane at the end of that episode. And she was a hippo. So again, love knew no boundaries, knew no difference of species. Rebecca herself even had a couple of love interests, potential love interests in the series, and they were both lions or tiger. And we're not talking Shere Khan tiger. The point is, when I hear people, kind of debate why Spike and Rarity are good together and why they're not good together, I think the one message that kind of gets lost is the reason it's been utilized or hinted at, subtly or strongly or minimized, minimally hinted at, I should say, is because it's an example of love conquering all, love knowing no boundaries. And I think that's why a lot of fans are attracted to it, and they support it because it knows no boundaries. It's like, yes, Spike may be a small dragon, but it's like, okay, Spike may be a small dragon, but what is stopping Rarity from not hanging out with him a lot, or always calling upon him to help her, or do this or that? Nothing. Nothing is stopping her because she has a love for him that's conquering everything before her, and is showing no boundary, is showing no restriction. Same with Spike. Here's Spike, a small dragon. What's stopping him from being around Rarity? Nothing. You could say, well, it's a crush he has. Okay, fine. But what's stopping him from, being done with that crush? Nothing. Nothing is stopping him but himself. Nothing is stopping Rarity from acknowledging Spike as more than just a teammate or just a friend, what have you, and just, kind of letting him down easily. Nothing's stopping her except herself. And I think that's the message there, is that only you could stop yourself from doing something. But if you really care about each other, probably beyond more than friendship, then basically the message there is love's conquering over that. Love is showing you no defining difference whatsoever. And I think that's the biggest example here with Spike and Rarity. Some might say, well, what about Fluttershy and Discord? It's the same way, right? Absolutely. Fluttershy basically sees a lot of good in Discord, sees that he can be fully, truly reformed, and Discord sees something special in Fluttershy, but what's stopping them from not, seeing each other? Or what's stopping Discord from saying, you know what, I don't want to listen to Fluttershy anymore, I want to go back to my old ways? Or what's stopping Fluttershy from saying, you know what, I've done what I could, but not much is working? Nothing. Nothing is stopping them but themselves. And what's keeping that relationship between the two going is the love that knows no boundaries. There's knows no limitations. And that's the same with Spike and Rarity. It knows no limitation. it's like I said before, we don't know how old Spike is. Yes, Twilight got him as an egg, but here's the thing. Twilight went to school maybe about a year before Spike's egg was created or found. So who's to say Spike's not around the same age, if not maybe about a year or so younger or half a year younger, Dragon Age-wise, than Twilight? Who's to say that? You know, we don't know his age from a Dragon Age perspective. You know, you take a look at Equestria girls, we know the girls are about, what, 16, 17 years old. They're in high school. So equivalently, they have to be like 20 or 30. Who's to say Spike probably isn't in his 20s or 30s as well? I'm just saying. The point I'm getting at, and I know I sound like a broken record here, is I think the reason this Spike Rarity deal, this Sparity deal is so strongly supported, why it's strongly, subtly, and from a minimal standpoint hinted at throughout the series, if not even in the movie, is because they want to show that it doesn't matter who you are, what you are, how big or strong or tall you are, what species or race you are, that if you truly love each other and you truly care about each other, that's all that matters. That love will conquer all, and love will show you that it knows no boundaries. It knows no defining species or race or age or gender or whatever in some cases. You know, when I went to high school, I had friends in different classes. And what surprised me is some of my fellow classmates of my class had boyfriends or girlfriends that were juniors or seniors. And you might think that's kind of crazy for that to happen, but yet it happened. And in some cases has been followed through upon. The point is, I can understand people have their difference of opinion when it comes to Spike and Rarity's relationship, and how they feel it just does, how a true-on boyfriend-girlfriend relationship would not work. I can understand and respect that. But as someone that supports this pairing, because of what I see, of what I've mentioned, because of what I've see out of what I've mentioned, all I think I ask on behalf of myself and anybody else that might support this pairing is just to hear us out. And, you know, just to hear us out and to kind of give us some valid, and all we ask is, you know, you hear us out when we kind of give mention about it, kind of explain the reasoning behind our support of it, and all we ask in return is if maybe you can point out maybe some pros that you see amongst a lot of the cons that you have. Again, I'm not saying nobody has to agree with what I'm saying here in this video or what anybody else says. You know, there's a lot of people that don't support Fluttershy and Discord. You know, that's their opinion, and they voice their reasons. But there are a lot that support it, and they voice their reasons. Same with Rarity and Spike. So that's really all I'm going to say on it. Let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like. And really, that's all I'm going to say. So have a good night, and I am out.